Yeah, and Corey, you've done a lot of work as far as building capacity here in Southeast Springs. What are some areas that we can continue pouring resources into?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me here. I should have said that initially, and having me back. I'll take that certificate. Taj hit this nail on the head, where we talked about how the more you work you do, the more you identify that there are gaps. Just when COVID hit, that we started doing some of the work of getting information out, we identified that there were gaps, specifically with our Spanish-speaking business owners, that we need to provide some of that, and the SBDC is working on filling those gaps, right? We are working on Spanish-speaking training in that area. We have done work now as a team. I know Thrive and many of the people in Southeast, of the organizations Southeast, have now worked with formerly incarcerated justice-involved folks. I'll give a shout out to Joaquin Mobley, who's not here, and we all work with very, very closely. But now it's time now that we need to focus on our Spanish-speaking only business owners that are out there, and we're like, oh, these people need some help. We have an SBDC that is one of the top 10 in the nation, and which is a big deal when you think that every state has 15 SBDCs, and ours is one of the top 10 in the nation, and the executive director here is constantly striving to roll out new programs, and we just identified that the Spanish-speaking business owners in Southeast in particular need some help. We also have in Crystal Latier at the county, when they were rolling out economic CARES grants, working with Colorado Enterprise Fund, also identified that there were business owners in the Korean community that were having problems filling out applications as well. And so there were some in that immigrant community that needed some help as well. And so again, another shout out to Crystal Latier at the county, also saying, we need to do something in that space as well. So there's constantly identifying folks that need some help. And so working together, again, going back, to, Taj said ecosystem, and it just, I went, that's perfect, Taj. And so I think that there's always areas where we can continue to pour resources into working collaboratively, that we can do that, Exponential Impact with their idea of mentorships. Coming from outside the city is also another thing that, wow, that is wonderful, a wonderful thing to do. And so, pouring resources into these businesses, that's what works from a collaborative standpoint, but we identify things like, our business owners that can do that. When Colorado Enterprise Fund was the entity that took in applications for grants during the CARES Act distribution, and we identified many of these areas, and we identified a lot of them needed help with the financial packages, right? To them, a W-9 didn't mean they didn't even understand what a W-9 was. And they asked us, what is this? Does this have to do with sales tax? Or does it have to do with immigration, right? And you think about it, and you think, oh, well, why wouldn't they understand what a W-9 is, right? But when they see IRS W-9, that means a sales tax, or immigration. They connected it to that. They didn't connect it to a form that had to do with them getting a check for a grant. So we have some work to do.
Yeah, and it's been really fascinating to see too, just the different efforts you guys have done with the classes here in Southeast Springs as well. And speaking of community outreach, you did mention Natasha, Exponential Impact. Tell us a little bit about what led you into your role at Exponential Impact and a little bit more about the programs that you guys have going on.
Sure, of course. So what really drew me to Exponential Impact and kind of to take a step out as well, right? We focus mostly on the tech entrepreneurship community and really growing and building upon the great kind of foundation we have and growing and developing economically as well through programs. And what drew me there originally was one, of course, the community, right? Who was around it and what the kind of foundation it started in 2017 had to really then go and expand and build more community around it. And then I think most importantly to me is the holistic approach. Right, and so that's combining access to capital as well as capacity building, to Corey's point, in terms of making sure we have the basics, but then also going beyond around the business strategy and product development as well. And so making sure that we also don't lose sight of the individuals behind each of the businesses. And I think that's really important, regardless of which community or which sector you're really a part of. Is every business has a founder behind it and a team behind it, and how do you support them in being well and whole as well.
Now, Yemi, to you, you've done so much in our community, and when we think about your role now with respects to business development, what's the role of government and how does that impact Southeast Colorado Springs?
Thank you, Patrice. That's very nice of you to say that I've done so much. I'm not sure about that. There's more to be done. My role at the city is I work as the Small Business Development Administrator. And when it comes to the role of economic development, I should also mention that I used to work at the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Corporation. So I'm in this role in economic development in government. So what is the role of the government in this ecosystem that we're talking about? And I think it's twofold. Is in policy and also in creating the right environment for economic development to happen and for flourishing to happen through economic development. And when I say policy, it's creating the right type of policy decisions that really encourage and promote equality across the whole city. And the second one is actually the most intriguing one for me. It's creating the right environment. And when I think environment, I think of placemaking. I think of parks. I think of infrastructure. I think of the right type of entities in that community, so that economic development can happen. And I don't know if the city has always been great at it, but we have gotten better. Between the year 2017 and 2023. The city would have made at least close to about $120 million in infrastructure investment in the Southeast, and that is really on the lower side. I think those numbers are climbing up. And the city most recently, we broke ground on the Panorama Park project, and so I think if local government can continue to provide the right foundation for Southeast, I think the possibilities are endless for economic development to happen.
Thank you, Yemi. Next question to you, Taj. You're a stakeholder in Southeast, but for those who might not know, how did Thrive get started and what has been your role?
I'm going to try to summarize this quickly and succinctly. So Thrive actually started as a church movement. Our local church, which our church is at the local level, have done phenomenal philanthropic give back work. I'm wearing my "Cause I Love You" t-shirt representing. But all of that to say that the churches in the Southeast community, our church particularly, said we wanted to go beyond food pantries and back to school drives. We wanted to solve a problem. We wanted to demonstrate our love. And so we actually were considering what problem should we focus on. And we decided to do a survey of the Shelton Fountain intersection. We were housing out at Carmel Middle School at the time. And I think we hit over 500 households in total. And the two things that they said consistently, I won't forget, were if they had kids, they said, give us something safe for our kids to do. And if they didn't have kids, they said, we need more work. These were people who were sometimes working 2 part-time jobs on top of a full-time job. And so it was really interesting to me, the concept of not that I need more money or I need a better paying job or I need a new career, I need more work. so it was very much so this mindset that was it wasn't going to solve the problem. And so what we decided to do was beta test it. The pastor of our church, he was an ex-con. He went into the prison system when he was 14. He got out at 33. Phenomenal guy. Got out with 2 degrees. Could not get consistent income. So we built a business around his story. We started a small auto detailing business where we focused on the mom and pop shops locally, and the ones that really didn't have large enough bays to basically clean their own cars. They had to sort of farm that out. Anyway, all of that to say, we flipped the thing that he thought was his weakness into his strength, and we were like, hey, we're going to build a business where we are hiring primarily ex-convicts and parolees, and we're giving them specifically job training experience, and they're incentivized by the work that they do, so there's no cap on the money that they can make off of it, and it's meant to be a gap step to more permanent employment. Well, the guy who was again, really smart guy, 2 degrees, very, very charming guy. Within less than a year, he turned that into about a $20,000 a month business. We knew we had something then. Then the idea was, okay, do they need to be college educated? So we started to develop a program for people who weren't necessarily college grads, who had remedial math and English skills. So what most parents who are trying to teach their kids today's math struggle with, we're like, okay, we can meet you right there and we can teach you the basics of building a business. It started off as a 3-month program, a boot camp. It has expanded into a year-long intensive, where now you have these different, I'll say this, I'll brag on my program here. I think we've got 7 rising stars out of it. We've got 1 Mayor's Civic Fellowship. We've got 1 Entrepreneur Finalist of the Year. We've had and these are our 2019 numbers. We don't have the 2020 numbers. The 2019 graduating class, this was 24 businesses. They collectively brought in close to about $2 million in their first year. They collectively created another 25 employment positions in the community in their first year. I think several of the businesses, 6 of the businesses hit 6 figures in their first year. I'm really, really proud of our students. I'm really, really proud of the program. I'm really, really proud that they have gone on to be our city's leaders. And I think a lot of that comes from this program came from the community, listening to the community's needs, designed around teaching the community at where it's at, not trying to make the community anything, but trying to give it the skills to solve its own problems, and then sort of accelerating them, kicking them out of the nest and making them make money before they graduate. You have to make money before you graduate my program. So yeah, it creates a lot of, we've got a lot of great recognition because of it. But Thrive really did come from us listening to what the community said it needed. And I think that's partly why we have so many applications every year. I think it's partly why it's so well loved.
I'd like to add to that. I actually serve as the board chair for Thrive Network, so it's been a privilege. It turns out that what we thought was just entrepreneurship training is leadership development training.
Yes.
The same skills and tools that you need to solve a problem to start a business, because that's what entrepreneurship is, solving a problem. But it's not limited to just business. We have a lot of complex social problems, and we're finding that most of our graduates, whether they have gone on to start a business or not, they've turned out to be just incredible leaders in the community and are getting just all kinds of airtime. And we're really proud of our students and our graduates, and some of them are now even board members and helping to lead the organization. So it turns out that entrepreneurship training does more than just starting a business. Leadership development, and it's also preparation for the workforce.
I agree.
And I know Corey has seen this too, that folks that started a business, successful for a little while. They had to close it for whatever reason. They end up being incredible workforce folks because they know how to read a profit and loss statement and balance sheet, and those things are really important. So yeah, thank you for.
I'll say something too
Thrive.
because I'm on the board for Thrive.
There's a theme.
Yes, and I'm very protective of it, mainly because the caliber of people that come in because they have a personal goal in mind, but when they graduate, they have a commitment to serve. And there's something that transforms you when you go through the program. And there are very few programs that do that for you. College doesn't do that for you. There aren't very many programs that do that for you, where you go in for a personal mission and you leave for a greater mission. And that's something special.
Thanks, guys.
And Corey, what do you think are some of the maybe untapped opportunities, specifically, and I know you talked about this briefly, but specifically when it comes to funding resources for Southeast businesses?
So the funding resources, I'm so very proud to announce that we, from Colorado Enterprise Fund specifically, we have several things that I'd like to announce. Our Transforming Safety loan program was just recently revamped. It's something that I'm very close, near and dear to. There's a loan component to the Transforming Safety program that was just recently revamped. It got off to a very slow start, mainly because the qualifications for it were were stringent and very traditional to a loan program. We have just recently gone in and revamped those to where you can now sign up for a class that you will go through. And when you go through that class, turn in your projections, you could qualify for a loan through the Colorado Enterprise Fund. It's for 5 years, 4.99%. And if you pay diligently on that loan for 3 years, the last 2 years will be forgiven. Wow. So yes, please email me at Corey at coloradoenterprisefund.org. Yes, if you know me, please send me. We're getting ready to, we're taking applications now for that class. I'm so excited to launch that. It's part of the Transforming Safety program, and it is a revamp. I'm so happy that we'll be able to be doing that for Southeast businesses. We also just, at Colorado Enterprise Fund, just launched the Black Business Loan Fund. So if you would like to take advantage of that, I would love to talk to you about that. That APR is 2.99%. So that's wonderful as well.
Y'all better come get this money.
Yeah, come get it. We also, Colorado Enterprise Fund just took over the Enterprise Zone program from the county of El Paso. So I'm very proud to say that we are now managing that for El Paso County. So I'm so happy to let you guys know about that.
This is why we keep bringing Corey back.
Yeah. I'm so very happy to let everybody know about those 3 programs. Please come see me if you don't have to remember all this, but if you are looking for funding, we will figure out what works best for you. So even if you're outside of Southeast Colorado Springs, maybe your business borders Southeast Colorado Springs, and maybe we can find something that works for you. But if you are in Southeast Colorado Springs, this class would work for you through the Southeast through the Transforming Safety program. If you want to access the Black Business Loan Fund, please come see me.
Thank you. Yeah, and Natasha, you guys have been called the ultimate startup champion. What initiatives are you working on currently that are influencing business and the Southeast community?
Well, thank you. And I would say these all are the ultimate startup champions in our community is, right, for sure. And then when it comes to Southeast specifically, it's kind of a long story long, right, in terms of when Exponential Impact was founded, it was really about solving for the key resource gaps that entrepreneurs face. And for us, it's how do we retain the talent we have here in our community, in all parts of our community, and make sure that they're able to start and scale their businesses. And so when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, we realized that one, we needed to postpone our programming that was kind of usual, so our accelerator program, and really looking at our core competencies and how we can take that to the community. So that access to capital and providing that, but then also with the mentorship, the leadership development, and the capacity building that goes alongside of it. And so with pretty much every organization and every individual on this panel, and you all as moderators too, teamed together with so many to create the Survive and Thrive program. And it originally started in March of 2020, and we provided low interest loans to businesses, understanding there was a major gap, right, between when the pandemic hit and who was going to be suffering.
I would also like to just say we were recipients of the Survive and Thrive loan, and had we not gotten it, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, it really is the community that was built as a part of the program that really strengthened. So thank you. And so beginning that program, we raised a fund locally of $2.3 million. So we were able to support 132 organizations. Each of those organizations, and Yemi was critical in developing this mentorship program. Each of those businesses or nonprofits were provided an individual community leader as a mentor, and then they went through 4 months of programming. And we did a lot around mental health and wellness, and you know, how do we navigate this as a community and help each other? Because of that kind of initial success, and you know, we supported over 1,000 jobs and had a pretty incredible kind of story when it comes to how the community came together locally, right? And I think that really speaks to the importance of a local problem, right? Yeah, it was brought on about something that was global, but it was a local problem in terms of how we all felt it. And then being able to develop a local solution that really goes to the specifics and continuing to build that. And so hundreds of people kind of came together for this program. And then specifically as it relates to the Southeast, we partnered with the city at the end of 2020, and Yemi's office, and working with him, and then Steve Posey over in community development as well. And we really looked at, you know, what KOAA has done, what others had done locally and then nationally as well in terms of providing that financial assistance. And then we asked who still felt through the gaps, right? And I think that's really important to constantly look at it as we're building these programs, right? And I think the more we have, the more specific we can get. And I think we continue to do that. So we looked at who fell through the cracks, and it was low to moderate income owned businesses, or those that employ, and those that had 5 or fewer employees. So we worked with the city and offered grants and community programming and that mentoring as well. And so we're wrapping up that program now, but we've been working with 23 businesses, primarily in the Southeast. 91% of that cohort is either veteran, minority, and or female owned. And so it was a really great opportunity to work with these businesses to build community and provide that financial assistance as well. Yemi, do you want to add anything to that? Yeah. You've been so critical.
I was planning on. I can't say enough to the work of Natasha, Exponential Impact, and the community of leaders that they gather just across the board. I had the privilege of serving with the executive team. In addition to my work at the city, I'm a business owner, and my business partner runs our businesses, and we were feeling the pinch. So this was a direct experience being translated into my work, going, oh my goodness, there are a lot of businesses that need help, and we didn't know what was coming down, if anything was coming out down the pipeline at the time. And without blinking an eye, Exponential Impact said, we got it. And so they stepped in, brought the key people together, and were able to not only just provide the right, it's part funding, but really a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, whether they're minority or not, you don't have to be a minority business owner to be lonely. The experience of business ownership and entrepreneurship is a very lonely space. And so we realized, okay, we're going to be in this for a while. It's part money, but man, what's going to carry us through this season is relationships. and folks that can come alongside of these business owners. And that's the work of Survive and Thrive, the program of Exponential Impact. And now they're having not just 1.0, 2.0, which it's that same program targeted to primarily Southeast businesses and minority and women-owned and veteran-owned. And so I'm looking forward to seeing a 3.0.
Yes.
And maybe a 4.0.
Yes, and then kind of going back to, the original question too is, how can we, take, what Yemi said around in terms of what came out of a crisis, and then how do we, take what was good that was developed out of that as a community. And so for us, we're looking at Survive and Thrive and realizing, we found a gap, and that we're still, finding a need for that kind of integrated programming and access to capital, and really building community around that. So that those kind of pieces. So then, how do we take this and make that permanent? So we're exploring revolving loan funds and, how to best support the communities, and working with individuals and community leaders to continue that.
And I think that's an accidental theme we're stumbling upon, and that what Corey mentioned too, and all the programs emerge out of crisis. So mentoring, revolving loan funds, how can we not let a crisis go to waste? And there is a crisis, and there has been a crisis in Southeast Colorado Springs. So how do we not let this opportunity go to waste? So that's a common theme I'm hearing now as we keep talking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to Corey's point too, working with Spanish-speaking businesses, that was something we definitely saw for this 2.0 program, and because of your leadership in this space as well, we're like, okay, we need, we hired an intern who could speak Spanish and did all the translation and all of that, and it was, because we keep working as a community and highlighting, how we're learning and growing from each program to make all of us better, and I think that's a huge component of it.
So you guys have been a little busy, but it's so refreshing to hear so many resources for the Southeast. So Yemi, let's keep talking about this, and tell us a little bit about the Southeast Economic Vitality Regional Leadership Group.
Absolutely. In the spirit of not letting a crisis go to waste, that group was birthed out of a crisis too. And that group belongs to the city of Colorado Springs. There are a lot of incredible Southeast initiatives going on. But how this group was birthed is out of the mayor's office, and the mayor's chief of staff and 5 leaders gathered around him and said, we got to do more. We got to use our collective influence. So collective impact is just a technical way of saying collaboration among the partners, which we've talked about, and I hope you can see that that's happening even within the 4 of us, that we are all connected at some level, even though we have our individual lanes. So when we talk about collective impact, we can't have collective impact without collective influence to solve complex social problems. And when you have collective influence, when you gather a group of leaders, you're pursuing collective intelligence. And that's kind of what this group has become now. It's probably about 30 plus leaders, and it's leaders from every major nonprofit in town that can influence Southeast. So we're talking, it's El Pomar, it's United Way, it's a chamber in EDC, and all the partners, and it's industry. We have a handful of industry leaders, and we have Southeast leaders represented in that call as well. We meet about every quarter, and the mayor's chief of staff leads the meeting. And the question we put in front of that group is, how can this group collectively leverage the collective influence to move the right Southeast priorities forward? Now, this group is not intended to come up with a solution. This group has said from day one, the Southeast community knows what those solutions are. Maybe we're just not using our influence to help make it happen. So it's upon this group to, again, use its collective influence to move those solutions forward. And so one of the first things that group did was do a scan of, over the last 10 years, what are the Southeast reports that are out there in the community over the last 10 years. And these are reports that from RISE, from the RISE organization. These are reports from the city around infrastructure. These are reports that talk about, that have surveyed the residents and what are the needs. So we took 10 different reports, about 700 pages worth of information. Now, no one wants to read 700 pages at all. I don't. But the City Economic Development, God bless my colleague Chelsea, she did the hard work, read through these documents, and we condensed those 700 pages of reporting into 8 primary themes of things that needs to happen in the Southeast that there's reports over and over call for, and 8 primary priorities or projects. And then we took that exercise a step forward because, you know, that adage, if you aim for everything, you aim for nothing. So you have to be strategic. You have to start somewhere. So what we did was, okay, here are these 8 themes, 8 priorities. What should we focus on? What should this group try to lean into? And so I had this group with Southeast leaders complete the same survey. And in that survey, over and over, the same themes and the same priorities came up in that survey that rose to the top. And that survey was completed with the, I feel like I'm getting really technical in this conversation. There's a technical term called Big Easy out of a model called Strategic Doing out of Purdue University. And in the Big Easy, you focus on projects that have the highest impact, but are relatively easier to accomplish. Now, they're not easy, but we can get this done, and they're going to have a huge impact. So that was the mentality the people that completed the survey, the leaders that completed the survey had as they completed the survey. So here's what rise to the top 3 themes, because I know you guys really want to know. Okay, so the first one is promoting entrepreneurship. Promoting entrepreneurship. We just talked about that. And job creation. Taj just told that story. That's the first one. The second theme was access to services. That's a whole talk in itself. The third one is affordable housing that prevents displacement. So these were the top 3 themes that came up over and over from the Big Easy. The top priorities of project, a Family Success Center. And by the way, this is what's so serendipitous about the top themes and the top projects is there's a direct connection between what the themes say and what the projects are. So when we say Family Success Services, that is a center that is intended to address the needs around providing increasing access to services, Department of Human Services, Public Health, to our Southeast residents. The second project that was called out in this survey was affordable housing projects, and all types of them needs to happen. So again, there's a direct connection to that theme. And then the last one was investment funds for Southeast entrepreneurs. Corey, God bless you, thank you. Natasha, thank you. So you can see that the work that is being done is connected to what the priorities are, what the themes are, what the community, the Southeast community is saying is that we need. And that is really the mentality. That's how we need to pursue change in Southeast Colorado Springs. We know what those are. You know, I had a leader approach me the other day and wanted to have another strategic session. I go, no, we're not strategizing anymore. I'm like, we know what to do. We don't need any more strategy. Here is the tangible action items that will make a huge impact. And so that's what this group is intended to do, is to say, what are those and how can we help? And what we've strategically started doing is bringing the core leaders in our community who are making things happen to this group to say, here are the folks that are doing it. Now we need you to support them. And in our last call, I was so proud. Taj was there, and many of our Thrive graduates were there at that call, you know, giving presentations to this group of senior leaders, telling them, here's what we are doing. You can support us. So that's what the Southeast Economic Vitality Regional Leadership Group is about.
Powerful.
And I
love
got
it.
passionate there.
I think this group has hung out a little bit. I think they know.
Yes, we have.
Thank you, Yemi. And Taj, we're going to switch to you. And Corey had mentioned the Transforming Safety Bill a little bit, but can you speak into how you were involved with the Transforming Safety Bill, how it's impacted your work and the Southeast community?
All right. Okay. All right. So you might have to come back to one of those questions. I might forget one of them. Just saying that right off the bat. So we got approached again because our students got recognized. The work in the community got recognized. We got approached by the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, who was working with Representatives Exum and Lee and Senators. I can't remember the senators off the top of my head. I feel really bad about that. But working with local representation to look at a second pilot community for this bill. This bill which is saying, hey, we've identified savings in the Department of Corrections budget Instead of that going into the state general fund, why don't we put that into communities that have lower income than the rest of their surrounding neighborhoods and have higher recidivism rates? And so they had already selected Northeast Aurora, and I think they were looking at Southeast Springs as the second. And I think Christy Donner, who runs that, she'd had 2 or 3 conversations before she got to me. And she hit me up on my cell phone, and I actually thought it was a joke. I didn't believe her. I was like, they were like, we're trying to bring money into your community. I hung up. I was like, you lying. This is somebody from the church pranking me. And so anyway, she called again, and we talked for about an hour and a half, where she was really trying to just learn about Southeast, and really was Southeast the right community this could work in. And I'm like, absolutely. We will take those dollars and we will turn them into millions. We'll take millions and we'll make millions more out of them. And so what we were able to do was I was able to work with them and present at the state capitol, speak for, be one of the representatives for Southeast, but also share the human interest stories, the stories of the impact, because we do have people who come from the criminal justice system, who come from generational poverty, who now are making 6 figures, and their kids are going to be okay and taken care of, and they can go to college now, and they've changed the trajectory for their entire family, and their family's future, their kids and their grandkids. Those stories got us invited back. We were, I think, the only Colorado Springs delegate that got invited back to speak again at the final vote. The vote went through in 2018, and the governor signed it into law June of that year, that was a huge win, because it brings a couple $1 million into Southeast Colorado Springs, specifically into organizations that the community itself is selecting to develop and address their needs. And we are fortunately one of them. I'm really, really proud of that. Eventually, the community that we helped get this thing for, these funds for, did elect to invest those funds into us, and we went from being a 3-month program where we maybe helped 8 or 6 people a year to being able to work up with upwards to about 40 people a year, being able to expand our programming, which increased their successes. And so that was a good one. I love to say that we get $150,000 from that grant, and we multiply it by 10 times the amount of economic output that our students actually bring into the community. They generate that 10 times over. So I feel like we're a good investment. And then what was the last question?
The direct impact with the Southeast community.
So I will say this, our story is very specific, but I would say you're seeing people who are community leaders who were saving kids on the street with no money, doing it before they got any recognition, like Lisa Jenkins with Kingdom Builders. She, with like Estevan Medina with Second Chance. They were rescuing kids that no one else saw, that no one else believed in. They were capturing our youth from becoming statistics, and now they actually get funds for that. Now they actually get help for that. They're not doing it from their pocketbook and putting their family last and having to like budget, can I feed my kids, and then how do I take care of these other people's kids that no one else is taking care of. Now they actually have resources to do that. So the collective input and impact is tremendous, to the point now where the data coming back from the program is so good that they're expanding it, and they're launching another one in Grand Junction for sure, and I think
Trinidad.
Trinidad's the second one, I think. So yeah, really proud of how we were able to participate with that.
Joaquin Mobley and I just went and testified at the Capitol in support of expansion, and they passed it. So Trinidad and Grand Junction are 2 expansion locations.
And Corey, when we look at the Hispanic business community, what are some ways that we can elevate their opportunities, resources, and funding? I know you mentioned, big part of this is the language barrier, making sure that there are Spanish-speaking classes as well. But what other resources are out there?
Oh my gosh, I hope we have enough time. But we have to celebrate successes. We have to highlight the businesses that are in Southeast. Southeast is by far the most diverse part of our city. We are going next year with the help of Thrive. Thrive is going to work to bring the first Fiestas Patrias to Colorado Springs, to downtown Colorado Springs, to celebrate Mexican culture and have Mexican booths at the event. And so in September for Mexican Independence Day, there will be an event. The Indy will help us promote that. And so I think elevating businesses in our Hispanic community is the first thing, and highlighting them and making sure that people know that they're here. This is a diverse community, and Southeast, has a lot of Hispanic businesses, so highlighting that they're here is the first step, and making sure that people know that they're here. So Thrive is taking a huge step in that area next year, holding the first ever event in downtown Colorado Springs. So that's the first thing. Providing funding. One of the loan funds that I did not mention earlier is that Colorado Enterprise Fund also has an I-10 loan fund. So for those Latino businesses that have an I-10, they also can apply through Colorado Enterprise Fund through our I-10 loan fund. So I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't bring it up earlier. So they can also apply through Colorado Enterprise Fund through that loan fund to help them expand or get going as well. So funding, exposure, making sure that they know that they're here, training in Spanish, making sure that they know that they're accepted, making sure that we help drive clients into their doors as well. The Southeast Express last month highlighted many of the businesses that are here. Some of the Latina-owned businesses were highlighted, and the Latino-owned businesses as well. So I think that those like startups, and like Thrive, the folks, the SBDC, so many of the people that you see up here are doing what we can, certainly, to help that community as well.
So many programs out there. I think this has been a really fascinating discussion, just to see all of the resources that are out there for our business community. And Natasha, we also want to know, how will XI continue to positively impact and also support the entrepreneurial footprint, of course, that we've talked about all day here in Colorado Springs and the Southeast?
Great question, and there's plenty of ways, right? And I think kind of going back to our core, right, which is tech entrepreneurship, and we really focused on that because of the scalability of those businesses, right, how big they can get and how quickly, and bringing in net new jobs and net new dollars. I don't have to tell many people that it is one of the least accessible types of entrepreneurship and type of businesses to get into across the nation, but Colorado Springs, of course, falls into that as well. So how can we provide bridges to those opportunities? So that's one, right? So bridges to the resources and support to explore what tech entrepreneurship looks like, to be part of a founding team, or to become, and through workforce development, part of that ecosystem as well. And then working with all of these leaders and beyond, what Yemi's been doing with the council, and taking strategy and the desired impacts, right? And then how do we start to implement them? And how can we be a partner and come alongside the implementation and support and amplify what is happening here? And then I think there's a role that Survive and Thrive can play, whether that's adapting it or taking the lessons learned and applying it as well. So those are a few ways.
So we talked strategy. We're no more strategy, right? So Yemi, question to you.
No promises.
How has your role directly impacted the movement, the forward movement, vitality in the southeast quadrant of our community?
Strategy. In some ways, but it's more. It's having. So I started at the city. I just clocked 2 years, 3 years ago, 3 weeks ago. Thank you. My first run at government, and it's been good. But about a year into my job, I was asked to be the Southeast project manager for the city's economic vitalities and initiatives in the Southeast. So that group falls under my work. And it's a nice fusion because of my relationship with Taj and my involvement with Thrive and the students and with Korea and with XI. So my role, serendipitously, has become a dot connector, a bridge builder between the various initiatives happening, should happen in the Southeast. And hopefully, my dream would be that because of my involvement, we've actually moved the needle forward. Okay, so I talked about the Southeast Economic Regional Leadership Group. So we have that group. Many of them have heard of what happened in the Southeast. Some of them don't even know. So our last meeting to bring in all those leaders, many of them are the next generation of leaders in our community who were born and raised from Southeast Colorado Springs. And many of these leaders have never met or not even aware of what they're working on. And so my role now is to bring that group to this group and create more opportunities. Another example of where my role really helps is how do we take strategy into action? And so we looked at promoting entrepreneurship as one of the top priorities in Southeast Colorado Springs, as well as investment fund. And an example of, okay, we have things happening, Colorado Enterprise Fund. We have opportunities that are coming to Thrive directly. But what role can Exponential Impact play? So reaching out to Natasha and Vance Brown, other leaders, and say, okay, here's an opportunity. Where are the gaps? How can you help with some of the gaps? So that's a sweet spot I find myself, especially in this pocket of the community that I love so much. And so it's been good to be in it, and I think my role is still unfolding. I'm figuring it out as I go every day, and hopefully flexible enough to make those tweaks and changes.
Awesome. Thank you, Yemi. Taj, to you, when we think about the revitalization of Southeast, where does Thrive make its biggest impact in that community?
So I would say in two areas specifically. One, we are producing entrepreneurs that are actually generating financial success. They're cash flowing upon graduating. We just got our 5-year numbers in because we're only 6 years old. But our 5-year numbers are that you are 300% more likely to be in business after graduating our program versus the national average. So I'm really, really happy about that. I think that the space that we fill is the space we kind of need to stay in. So we're expanding our programming. We're adding some digital programming so that the restraints of me having to teach all the classes will be lifted, and we'll be able to help more students, help more people in the community, and get a cadre of facilitators to expand what we do. So I would say that's the big one. That's where we sort of fit the space. Now I'm going to jump in and take a little extra time and say what I think we need to supplement. I do think that we need we think large-scale employer, but I think we think that very traditionally. I'd love for us to think outside the box and look at potential worker co-ops where people could earn equity in the companies that they work in. And there's certain things like the Cleveland model where they use anchor institutions, local universities and hospitals as sort of their primary base clientele, while the co-ops build themselves up into fully fledged corporations. It creates a lot of equity ownership in the community. It creates a lot of education. And then also I would say the other thing we need is Southeast needs an attraction. We have a lot of culture. We have a lot of art. We have a lot of talent. We have nowhere to really showcase that with the style, with the and the investment that the community deserves. I know if we had a hub like that, I know we would 100% be using it. We use the Chinook Center and every other center that we have in the community. We would absolutely take advantage of an attraction, and if it was designed well enough to drive business to our community, it would have a ripple effect. So that's when we say we need surrounding Thrive and the other things that we're doing. Thrive will stay in its lane, but but we do need some people to help with this.
Yeah. Really, really great conversation today. Thank you all for coming out here. This is just incredible. Of course, your rapport and the passion that you guys all have for this community, just incredible. So huge thank you to all of our panel guests for joining in on this really fantastic conversation. This has just been such a treat to listen to you all today. So thank you.
Thank you, panel members. Thank you, Allison. We want to thank the Colorado Springs Business Journal and the Colorado Springs Independent. Please mark your calendars for the next Colorado Springs Journal COSCEO on June 10th. For details, you can go to csbj.com. And please stay tuned to all things Southeast Express at southeastexpress.org/events for all things happening in the future. Our next Southeast Coffee Connect with Allison and I will be Wednesday, June 30th at noon here on KOAA on civics with our guest panels from Citizens Project, League of Women Voters, Center for the Study of Government and the Individual, and the City Council District 4. I'm Patrice Ravenscroft, Associate Director of the Southeast Express. Thank you, be safe, and we'll see you next time.